Hey guys, tonight we journey deep into a time older than the dinosaurs, older than anything you've probably imagined, to a world scorched by sun and shaped by hunger. A place where nothing wears feathers or smiles. A place where dominance isn't about being big, it's about being first. You stand alone in a landscape stitched together from nightmares. The sky is rust-colored, bruised and swollen. The trees, if you can call them that, look like someone tried to grow pipe cleaners into scaffolding. The wind doesn't whisper, it rasps, dragging dust across cracked stone like claws over parchment. This is Earth, about 260 million years ago. Welcome to the Permian. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now, dim the lights and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge through the heat, your boots, if you had boots, sinking slightly into dirt baked dry enough to crumble. Every breath tastes like sun-warmed metal. The air is lifeless. Until it isn't. Something growls. Not a big roar, not a thunderous bellow, just a quiet, low-frequency rumble from behind the rocks to your left. You freeze. Then it steps out. At first, you think it's a mistake, a glitch, a mix-up of animal parts that somehow walked away from the design table. But no, it's real. And it's watching you. Meet Gorgonops. Long-limbed, low-bodied, and all business. Its skull is massive, as if designed by a committee that couldn't agree on whether to make it a cat, a crocodile, or a saber-tooth. So they compromised and made it scarier. It moves with a kind of muscular confidence, its saber teeth catching the dull light. Those teeth are why the air smells like blood long after it's gone. They don't just punch her, they open things. It sees you and dismisses you. That's worse than a threat. You crouch instinctively. There's no rule book for this moment, but your body knows what to do. The Gorgonops turns its head, sniffs the wind, and saunters away. Its tail flicking behind it like punctuation. Welcome to the apex. You stay low as you follow, not too close, just enough to witness. The Permian isn't a world you survive by standing out. You survive by not being noticed. Around you, life moves in strange, uncomfortable ways. There's a herd of dicynodonts, squat, wrinkled creatures with tusks like someone gave up halfway through designing a pig. They graze nervously. One of them sneezes and 3 others jump. That's the level of anxiety here. Mainstream paleontology tells us Gorgonops was one of the earliest apex predators. Long before the first dinosaur cracked an egg, Gorgonops was already perfecting the art of ending things. With those teeth, that body, that attitude. But it wasn't just a predator. It was a problem. You follow its trail to a rocky outcrop. Bones litter the ground. Ribs, femurs, skulls so crushed you can't even guess who they belong to. Something about the way the bones are broken tells a story, not of sloppy hunger, but of efficiency. You crouch by a partial skeleton and notice deep grooves, twin arcs curving through the vertebrae. Those saber teeth don't just kill, they leave signatures. Historians still argue whether Gorgonops was cold-blooded like reptiles or something warmer, faster, hungrier. Evidence suggests a middle ground, a metabolic system that let it move longer, strike harder, and recover faster than its contemporaries. You stand and scan the horizon, flat, lifeless, until you realize that's a lie. Everything here is listening. You press forward, your feet crunching over desiccated leaves and the occasional insect that looks like it belongs in a horror film. A dragonfly the size of your forearm buzzes past, its wings glinting with iridescent filth. And then, movement. A diactodont bolts from a nearby bush. It's small, furry-ish, shaped like a sausage that decided to evolve legs. It doesn't get far. Gorgonops reappears like a trapdoor snapping open. One lunge, one bite. No second chances. The kill is silent. The sabers flash once, and then the predator begins to feed. You step behind a fallen log and observe. It rips, tears, swallows. There's no theatrics, just necessity. The ribs give way with a soft crunch. The spine bends. The legs twitch, and then stop. Here's a fringe theory. Some researchers believe Gorgonops' bite was so precise it could sever the spinal cord in a single strike. Less mess, less risk. Efficiency again. You wonder how many of them roam this land. A dozen? 100? Or just this one, patrolling a range so large no one ever dared challenge it? Whatever the number, one thing is clear. This isn't a world that waits for you to catch up. You duck as a shadow passes overhead, a massive insect maybe, or something worse. Gorgonops doesn't even look up. It has its prize. You, meanwhile, wonder how long you can keep doing this. You thought you came here to observe, to learn. But now, you're starting to feel like prey. The sun begins to fall, casting long, jagged shadows across the valley. You find a place to rest, hidden beneath what might be a tree or a collapsed plant that once hoped to be one. Your heart still races. You think about those saber teeth. You think about what it means to be built for a world that never intended to be kind. And you fall asleep to the sound of something very old breathing just beyond the firelight.
You wake with a cramp in your neck and dust on your lips. The ground is colder now, the air thinner. Light filters down in strange angles, red and slanted, like it's bleeding through the atmosphere instead of shining. Somewhere nearby, something is chewing, and you already know what it is. You inch forward, cautious, quiet. Over the rise, the Gorgonops crouches low over its kill. Not the Dictodon from yesterday, something larger, heavier. Ribcage splayed open like a broken umbrella. Blood pools in the dust, sticky and dark. The predator doesn't look up. It's busy, focused. It's not eating like a lion, all glory and gorging. It's working, tugging meat from bone with those long grooved teeth. Bracing with its forelimbs, using sheer leverage to rip muscle away like fabric. The sound is worse than the sight. Snap, tear, chew. You don't flinch. Not anymore. You're learning. You've stopped looking at Gorgonops like a monster. You're starting to see it as necessary. A product of a system that only rewards efficiency. Here, evolution doesn't care how flashy you are. It only cares if you can feed yourself today, and again tomorrow, and the day after that. This isn't cruelty, it's math. You settle into the shadow of a nearby rock and observe the king at work. Let's break it down. Gorgonops belongs to a group called therapsids, transitional forms between reptiles and mammals. It's not a dinosaur, not even close. But it's not a mammal either. It walks the tightrope between both. Limbs tucked beneath its body, unlike the lazy sprawl of lizards. A jaw hinge built for a bite that opens to impossible angles. That's the secret to those sabers. It can open its mouth wide enough to strike without breaking them on its own bones. You shift and notice the structure of its shoulder. Low slung, dense. Built not for speed, but impact. When Gorgonops hits something, it stays hit. And those claws? They're not just for decoration. They're anchors, tools, instruments of control. You watch as it pins the carcass down, tears off another piece, and chews with deliberate focus. Historians still argue whether Gorgonops hunted solo or in pairs, maybe even loose packs. Some fossil sites show multiple individuals in the same strata, accidental or a sign of group strategy. Either way, there's only one here now, and it's enough. You watch for an hour, maybe more, until the Gorgonops stands, stretches, and pads away into the brush. Slow, casual, like a god finished with its altar. You approach the carcass once it's gone. The Dicynodont is nearly unrecognizable now, torn from shoulder to flank. But the interesting part, what's left? Gorgonops didn't waste time with gristle. It knew what to take. High-calorie organs, thigh meat. It even broke a few ribs to reach the lungs. This isn't savage, it's surgical. You sit nearby, eyes on the blood-stained dirt, and feel something you didn't expect. Admiration. And then, a sound. Low. Closer. Another one? You freeze, eyes darting. There, beyond the hill, another shape moving through the low scrub. Not Gorgonops, something smaller, leaner. Lycanops maybe. A cousin, same long snout, same general shape, but faster, more jackal than jaguar. It sniffs the air, catches the scent of blood, and slinks toward the remains. A rookie mistake, because Gorgonops isn't far. It hits the intruder like a sledgehammer. No warning, no roar, just impact. The Lycanops yelps, then disappears beneath a blur of claws and fury. It doesn't even fight back, just writhes, then bolts into the underbrush, limping, humiliated. The message is clear. Territory is not up for negotiation. The Gorgonops doesn't chase. It returns to the kill, confirms nothing was stolen, then, satisfied, moves off again. This time toward a shaded crag at the edge of the valley. You follow, carefully, because now you want to understand. A mainstream fact, Gorgonops fossils were first discovered in the late 19th century in Russia and South Africa. Back then, scientists didn't know what to do with them. The skull was too reptilian to be mammal, but the limbs were wrong for a lizard. The solution? They coined mammal-like reptiles, a term that's now outdated but still lingers in textbooks and imaginations. You crawl into a thicket as the Gorgonops settles beneath a crooked tree, tail twitching. It's resting now, but not asleep. Eyes half open, ears flicking, nose twitching at the breeze. It never really turns off. That's the cost of ruling. Even kings have to sleep with one eye open. Here's a fringe theory. Some paleontologists speculate Gorgonops didn't just use its sabers for killing prey. They may have also been display weapons for intimidation, mating, or even mock combat. Sabers like that aren't efficient. They're fragile, which means they might have had social value too. Can you imagine that? Two Gorgonops sidling up beside each other, not to fight, but to compare tooth length? It sounds ridiculous, until you remember that peacocks exist. You lean against a rock and think about what you've seen. The speed, the strategy, the moment of mercy when it saw you and didn't kill you. Maybe not mercy, maybe just irrelevance. But still, it chose not to care. That choice haunts you more than the violence. You drift into a light sleep beneath a canopy of twisted branches and buzzing insects, the smell of blood still clinging to the air. When you wake, the sky is darker, the shadows longer, and Gorgonops is gone. Again. A ghost. A whisper. And you find yourself on your feet, walking, heart pounding, not with fear anymore, but with purpose. You have to find it again. You have to know what comes next.
The footprints are deeper now, pressed into the soil like they were stamped by something heavier than the air itself. They track in a wavering line, down through the scrubland, past dry stream beds and gnarled trees. You follow them like a sleepwalker. Something about them has changed. They're uneven. One paw drags slightly. The stride is off. Not by much, but enough. Gorgonops is wounded. You don't know when it happened. Maybe during that last kill. Maybe during the territory dispute with Lycanops. Maybe it's been wearing the wound for days, hiding it beneath the blur of its ferocity. But now the king is limping, and that makes this real. You crest a ridge and pause.
Below you, the land opens wide into a bowl-shaped basin, a cracked cradle of dust and stone. Scattered across it are herds, prey animals, mostly periosaurs, heavy, horn-faced herbivores built like armored Ottomans. You've seen them before, plodding, slow, all muscle and no momentum. But the way they move now, it's different. They're clustered, nervous. Something's watching them. And then you see it. The Gorgonops is crouched low against the rocks, belly brushing the ground, its eyes locked on the edge of the herd. The limp is gone, or hidden. It stalks forward in bursts. Pause, shift weight, wait. Closer, closer, and then motion. The herd senses it. Rear animals bray, shuffle. A ripple passes through the group like wind through tall grass. Then they bolt, all at once, like the land itself told them to run. But Gorgonops isn't charging, it's targeting. A lone periosaur veers slightly right, slower, bulkier. Gorgonops moves with sudden speed, no roar, no sound, just muscle and silence. It covers the distance in seconds, leaps, and slams into the periosaur's side. The sound is brutal, not elegant, not precise. This isn't a perfect kill. It's a desperate one. The claws dig deep, the sabers strike, but not cleanly. The prey thrashes, and dust clouds erupt around them. You flinch as the periosaur bucks, nearly throwing its attacker, but Gorgonops holds, bites again. Finally, the struggle ends. Silence. You approach as Gorgonops steps back, panting. Blood slicks its muzzle. Its leg trembles slightly, the injured one. This kill cost it something, but it was necessary. You crouch behind the boulder as it begins to feed. Slower than before, more deliberate, every motion laced with pain. Here's a mainstream paleontological fact. Gorgonops, like other apex predators, likely had a high metabolic rate, meaning it had to eat often. An injury could mean starvation within days. There weren't antibiotics, no rest and recovery. If you didn't kill, you didn't last. Which makes this kill a kind of resistance, a rebellion against entropy. You watch the Gorgonops chew around the ribs, tearing off thick cords of meat and letting them fall, like it's too tired to finish. Flies circle. A smaller scavenger peeks from the bushes. It's ignored, for now. And here's something odd. The Gorgonops pauses, looks up, right at you. Not a quick glance, not suspicion, just recognition. Like it knows you've been following it, watching, witnessing. And for a moment, its eyes seem less like a predator's and more like something else, something tired. Then it turns, limps into the trees, and vanishes. You wait until the sun begins to lower, then approach the carcass. There's meat left. That's new. Gorgonops never leaves food. You stare at the half-eaten prey, the blood trail leading away, and feel a cold knot in your chest. This wasn't a victory. It was survival. You walk beside the tracks again, and now they're unmistakable. Deeper, shakier, the drag mark longer. The king is bleeding from somewhere internal. You can see the pattern in the soil, occasional droplets, irregular pacing, a stumble near a downed tree. This is no longer a hunt. This is a decline. You crest the ridge and spot something you didn't expect. Water. A shallow pool, barely more than a puddle, reflecting the sun like melted copper. And beside it, Gorgonops, drinking, slowly, cautiously. Its whole body sags with fatigue. It licks its shoulder once, then lies down, side pressed to the cool mud. You sit across the pool, silent. You should feel triumphant. You followed the apex, watched it kill, survive, dominate, and now you're watching it die. But it's not fear you feel.
It's grief. A quirky paleontological note. Few complete Gorgonops skeletons have been found in death poses. Many are disarticulated, scattered by scavengers, or buried in floods. But one site in South Africa revealed an almost intact individual, curled as if asleep, bones undisturbed. Scientists still debate whether it died in a den or whether it simply lay down and didn't wake up. You wonder if that's that moment. If Gorgonops is choosing stillness over hunger, rest over pain. If the most brutal predator you've never heard of is going to meet extinction not with a roar, but a sigh. You sit until the light fades completely. It doesn't move again, and you just know. You lie on your side, mirroring the shape of its body, breathing the same air, letting the silence settle around you like ash. Because tonight, you don't sleep near the predator. You sleep beside the end of an era.
Morning breaks slow. No golden sunrise, just a gray wash sliding across the sky like dust on a mirror. You sit up slowly, bones stiff, eyes sore. The body is still there, Gorgonops curled like it was simply tired, not gone. But it is gone. There's no mistaking that now. No rise in the ribs, no flicker of ear or tail. Even the flies seem hesitant to touch it. You approach, kneel beside it, gently place your hand on the cooling hide. It's strange. The saber teeth are still terrifying, even in death. Curved, yellowed, longer than your hand. But now, they just look heavy. Like they were always a burden. You take a step back and exhale. And for the first time in this whole journey, you realize how quiet the world has become. Too quiet. No insect drone, no distant thump of prey, no warning cries. The land itself has gone still, like it too is holding its breath. You climb a low ridge, wiping sweat and grief from your brow, and look out across the valley. The herds are gone. No movement, no dust trails, just a carcass here, a skeleton there. Whatever was fleeing Gorgonops may now be fleeing everything. You start walking again. What else is there to do? Hours pass, maybe more. The land shifts beneath your feet, dry patches turning to cracked mud, then again to stony flats. The air is thicker now, humid, but not in the way that promises rain. It's the kind of heat that coils, waiting to strike. You crouch beside a half-dried riverbed, brush away the topsoil with your fingers, and spot bones. Lots of them. Some small, Dictodon maybe. Others bigger. They're all jumbled, no signs of order or burial. Just debris. It feels like you've stumbled into a memory graveyard. You push on, and that's when you hear it. A faint, rhythmic thud. Not hoofbeats, not footsteps, something deeper. The ground vibrates. You freeze. Not fear, not yet, just confusion. Then it happens again. A low, drawn-out rumble rolls across the landscape, and this time, the earth under your boots shifts slightly. Not from above, from below. You climb another ridge for a better look, and see it in the distance. A thin column of smoke, rising like a needle puncturing the sky. Not black, not white. A strange orange-gray that glows even in daylight. The volcanoes are waking. Here's a mainstream paleontological truth. Near the end of the Permian, enormous volcanic eruptions in what's now Siberia began pumping CO2 and sulfur into the atmosphere on a scale the Earth had never experienced. These weren't eruptions in the explosive sense. They leaked for thousands of years, slowly, steadily, suffocatingly. And downwind, everything dies. You sit down, winded, not from the hike, but from the realization. Gorgonops didn't just die. It timed out. The air is heavier now. You cough once, then again. The second time tastes like copper. You pull your shirt up over your mouth and move on. Around midday, you stumble across another predator. Smaller, sleeker, maybe Cyclops. It lies curled beneath a scorched shrub, tongue lolling. Not dead yet, but close. Its ribs are visible, eyes glassy. When you step near, it doesn't even growl. It just watches you. And in that glassy stare, you see something awful. It knows. It knows the way Gorgonops did. That this isn't just hunger, or injury, or bad luck. This is systemic. This is collapse. Historians still debate the order in which species vanished during the Great Dying. Did the top predators go first, starved by vanishing prey? Or did they cling longer than expected, feeding off the dead until there was nothing left but dust and shadow? You walk past a Cyclops. It doesn't watch you go. You find shelter in a shallow cave that evening. Not deep, not comfortable, but cool enough to breathe. You scrape together some dry moss and light it with a flint strike, watching the flames shiver. As night falls, the sky turns strange. No stars, no moon. Just a dim, fiery haze along the horizon. You try not to think about what's burning. Instead, you close your eyes and remember the Gorgonops. Not the dying, the living. The way it moved through the brush like smoke. The way its eyes locked onto yours. The casual arrogance of a creature that had never known fear until the last few days. That's the part that stays. You drift into a shallow sleep, waking ever so often to silence. True silence. Not absence of sound. Absence of possibility. By morning, the ash has started falling. Light, harmless at first, like gray snowflakes drifting from nowhere. You brush it off your shoulders and watch it collect on the stones. This is just the beginning. There's a fringe theory out there, one that doesn't show up in textbooks, but floats around late-night campfires and backroom lectures. It says the end of the Permian wasn't a series of misfortunes. It was a reset, the Earth cleansing itself, a natural system's way of saying, this isn't working, let's try again. You don't know if that's true. But standing here now, watching ash fall on the bones of a world that never even knew what it was losing, it feels true. You walk again. The wind picks up, and in that wind, you swear you hear something. Not a growl, not a roar, just breath. Remembered. The path ahead is unfamiliar now. Not just because the terrain has changed, though it has, dramatically. The land is darker, softer. The ash is thicker underfoot, muffling your steps like a whisper you can't quite trust. It's unfamiliar because you're alone. For the first time since this began, Gorgonops is gone. Not just physically, but emotionally. The tension has drained from the air, and that might be worse. You descend into a narrow valley where the trees are thin and warped, bent as if leaning away from something that no longer exists. Strange plants sprout in crooked patterns, struggling to hold shape. A few cough out spores when you brush past them. The ground exhales rot. And still, nothing moves. Until it does. Ahead, barely visible through the fog of rising heat, a Dinosaurs emerges, small, waddling, ever anxious. It darts from a burrow and sniffs the air, then freezes. Its eyes sweep the horizon. It doesn't see you, but it's looking for something else. Something that's no longer coming. You feel that chill again, the one that has nothing to do with temperature. The kind of chill that comes when a system breaks down, and the gears keep turning even after the engines shut off. The Dinosaurs disappears, into the ground, into time. You keep walking, and that's when you find it. Not a Gorgonops, but a mark, a message. On the side of a large flat rock, deep gouges, 4 parallel claw marks, recent, maybe a few days old, but already filling with ash. Like someone tried to etch their name into a world that no longer reads. You kneel beside it and run your fingers across the grooves. They're shallow but purposeful, too deliberate to be a casual scratch, not deep enough for a kill, just enough to say, I was here. You exhale, suddenly aware that you've stopped blinking. You realize that's what Gorgonops was doing too. Not just hunting, witnessing, laying claim. Not for dominance, for memory. You stand, shaking off the dust, and descend toward what looks like a stream bed. It's not. It's dry now, a scar where water used to run. The stones have turned strange colors, green, black, rusted red, chemical runoff. You step around a puddle that hisses softly at the edges. Sulfur. The land is poisoned. A mainstreamed fact, during the Siberian Traps eruptions, massive amounts of sulfur dioxide entered the atmosphere, leading to acid rain that changed the pH of soil and water. Rivers died, plants mutated, food chains folded in on themselves. You look down at the cracked mud and see more bones. A juvenile plesiosaur, skull intact, jaw open. It didn't run. It probably didn't even know to. You glance up, thunder rumbles, but there are no clouds. That's not thunder. It's the ground. Again. Far in the distance, a new crack splits the horizon. You squint. It's not just smoke now, it's firelight. A dull orange glow rising from the earth, like the world is being lit from below. You head the other direction, because what else can you do? Here's a quirky theory some paleontologists toss around, not seriously, but with a certain fondness. They joke that Gorgonops may have been too cool to last, too specialized, too brutal, too confident. Nature doesn't favor the flashy for long. It favors the flexible. And saber-teeth aren't flexible. You pass another corpse, a scavenger, partially eaten, then abandoned. The bite marks, not Gorgonops, something smaller, rougher, less clean. Not a precision killer, just something hungry. And that's the difference. Gorgonops killed with purpose. This thing killed because it was scared. You sit near a burned out stump and rest. And then, like a shadow behind your eyelids, you remember something. That last moment before the Gorgonops vanished. The way it looked at you. Like it wasn't angry or afraid. Just tired. That look haunts you more than the teeth ever did, because it was the look of a creature realizing it no longer fit, not just in space, in time. You drink from your canteen. The water tastes like smoke. You grimace, but you drink anyway. That's what survival means now. It's not about pride or dominance. It's about taking the next step. Even if the ground under it might crack, even if the sky above it might fall. You rise and keep going. The path narrows between two cliffs.
The walls are scratched, again with claw marks, some familiar, some not. Maybe Gorgonops walked the same trail, maybe others. You hear movement behind you and freeze, a rustle, a hiss, then nothing. You don't check, you just walk faster. Because that's another thing Gorgonops taught you: don't waste energy on shadows. But you're no longer sure if you're following extinction or if it's following you. By sunset, the sky glows red, then purple, then black. No stars, just that haze. The smell of smoke and minerals and endings. You build a fire with shaking hands, not for warmth, for noise. Because silence now is the most dangerous sound. You sit with your back to a stone wall and watch the flame dance. You remember the kills, the chase, the limping, the grave, the claw marks. You remember how Gorgonops moved like it owned the world, and how it died knowing it didn't. You whisper a name that was never really spoken aloud, not by them, not by anything. Gorgonops. And somewhere, something hears you. Or maybe nothing does. Maybe that's the point.
The rain starts just before dawn. At first, it's quiet, barely more than a mist. Then it thickens, each drop heavier than the last, pattering into the ash like footsteps. You sit up slowly, blinking away the grit clinging to your lashes. The world is dripping. Not refreshing rain, not life-giving. This is acidic. You can smell it, sharp, metallic, unnatural. You find shelter under a rocky overhang as rivulets snake past your feet, carving small channels into the silty ground. Where they collect, the water bubbles, not violently, just enough to tell you, don't drink it. The Permian earth is sick, and you're watching it sweat. You huddle beneath the ledge, remembering the way Gorgonops used to wait in the shade, not like it needed it, but like it preferred to be cool before the violence started. The rain reminds you of that, how even kings take cover when the world is angry. And today, the world is furious. By midday, the clouds lift a little, revealing a sky the color of bone. You step back out, everything slick. The ash has turned to sludge. Your boots, or bare feet, depending on your imagination, sink slightly into it. The trees drip. A few insects twitch out from crevices, then vanish again. And still, no Gorgonops. You haven't seen tracks in days. You haven't heard anything but your own breath. You pause on a slope overlooking a basin below. Something's moving down there. Small, fast, not predator, not prey. Rodents, or something close. Proto-mammals. They scurry across the mud in little bursts, tails trailing, fur wet and plastered to their bodies. You crouch and watch them, surprised by the simple fact: they're alive. Not surviving, thriving. They dig, they huddle. One of them chirps. You wonder if they even remember Gorgonops, if their instincts still flinch at the scent of saber-toothed blood, or if time has already erased the terror. Historians still argue whether early mammals, our distant ancestors, coexisted with Gorgonops or simply inherited the world it left behind. But here, watching them dart across ash and acid, one thing becomes clear. They're built for this. Not strong, not fast, but small and clever. You walk down toward the basin, slow and careful. The rodents scatter. One pauses, looks at you, then ducks into a burrow. A burrow. That's the key, isn't it? Gorgonops ruled the open ground. But this isn't an open world anymore. It's narrow, hostile, cramped, and only those who go underground have a future. You stand over the burrow and feel the earth below you. It's warm, not from sunlight, from below. The volcanoes are closer now. You can smell the heat in the soil, even when the air is cold. You back away. Somewhere nearby, a carcass rots. Not recent, the bones are picked clean. Probably Dicynodont again, bones scattered like it panicked before dying. No tooth marks, no predators, just collapse. You keep walking until the ridge falls away into a narrow valley lined with blackened trees. Their bark is coated in ash. Their leaves, what's left, hang limp and oily. You run your fingers across one. It smears. You remember a detail from an old French theory. In the final stretch of the Permian, trees stopped photosynthesizing properly. The air was too toxic, the sunlight too faint. The forests didn't burn, they rotted standing up. This valley is full of ghosts that never got to fall over. And as you walk between them, you feel like one of them. You find a shallow cave before nightfall and decide to stay there. No fire this time, just silence and thoughts. You lie back, eyes on the ceiling, which is low and damp, and think about those first days when you followed Gorgonops. The first time you saw it, the way it moved, the way it didn't kill you, the way it vanished without ceremony. You ask yourself, did you come here to see something die? Or did you come to remember it? You close your eyes and dream of claws on stone, of breath in the dark, of saber teeth just inches from your face and not biting. In the dream, Gorgonops speaks, not with words, but with stillness, with presence. You wake in the middle of the night, sweating. The air is thick, the silence louder than ever. You step outside, and there it is. No, not the real thing, just a shape, on the ridge, a silhouette. It stands for a moment, unmoving. Then it vanishes into the trees. You don't chase it. You don't need to, because you understand now. Gorgonops didn't go extinct all at once. It faded, one ridge at a time, one kill at a time, one breath at a time. You sit and let the silence wrap around you, not as a threat, but as a memory. The time that lingers just long enough to matter, and then disappears, like saber teeth sinking into dust.
You walk without purpose now, not because you're lost, but because the land no longer leads you anywhere. There are no fresh trails, no movement in the underbrush, just wind, ash, and the occasional whisper of something that might once have been a forest. The sky presses down, a dull copper bruise overhead. You squint against the light and try to imagine the sun, not the one you've seen all your life, but the one that watched over this world. Hotter, closer, less forgiving. The path tilts downward into a shallow canyon. You slide carefully over scree and loose stone, boots or bare soles grinding against grit. The rocks here are slick, stained by chemical runoff. Something died nearby. You smell it before you see it. Another periosaur. Collapsed in a twisted heap at the base of a slope. No visible wounds, just ribs rising like fingers. Flies buzz, but lazily. Even they seem bored with extinction. You step closer. It's bloated, split in places, and you realize something awful. This animal didn't die from claws or teeth. It overheated. You touch the ground and recoil. It's hot. Not just sunbaked, internally warmed, like the planet's blood is too close to the surface. You stand quickly, heart pounding, because this isn't just climate change, it's systemic failure. Mainstream paleontology confirms this. Temperatures near the equator during the late Permian may have reached 60 degrees Celsius, 140 Fahrenheit at times. Unlivable.
Not just for mammals or reptiles, for anything. Even the oceans began to stagnate, deprived of oxygen. You climb out of the canyon and try not to think about how many more valleys hold bodies like that. The next ridge is worse. The trees, if they're still trees, are scorched to their roots. Leaves turn to oily soot. The ground here is cracked open in long fault lines, each one exhaling heat and dust. And, beside one of them, movement. Your heart stutters. A shape, low and sleek, moving slowly between two rocks. You crouch, hold your breath. It's Gorgonops, or something like it. Limping, thinner than before, scarred, one flank matted with old blood. You don't move, you just watch. It doesn't notice you, or it doesn't care. It reaches the edge of a dry stream, noses at the dirt, digs weakly. Nothing. It tries again. Still nothing. You realize it's looking for water, or food, or something, but the world doesn't offer it anything anymore. And then, another sound. Not growling, not hissing, coughing. The Gorgonops hacks, stumbles, steadies itself. Its whole body trembles once, then again. It's dying, but not from a wound, from the world. You stay crouched behind a boulder as it finally collapses under a leaning tree. It doesn't curl up, doesn't try to hide, just lies there. Eyes open, mouth barely moving. You feel something twist inside you. Not fear, not pity, just a deep bone-level recognition. You've seen this before, not in predators, in people. That look, that stillness, the quiet agreement that nothing else can be done. You want to go to it, to sit beside it, but you don't, because this isn't your story. It's theirs, and it's almost over. Here's a fringe theory you remember. Some researchers speculate that Gorgonops and creatures like it may have experienced a kind of ecological confusion as their world died. Food disappeared, prey patterns changed, temperature spiked, and instincts that had worked for millions of years suddenly didn't. You sit for hours. The sun doesn't set. It sinks, like it too has given up. And still the Gorgonops lies there, blinking occasionally, tail twitching. You begin to wonder if it's even real, or if it's just your mind trying to hold on to something sharp in a world going dull. Eventually, it moves, just once, lifts its head, looks toward the horizon, and then lowers it again, still breathing. But you know, this is the last one, or one of them, and it's waiting. You retreat without sound, without breaking eye contact, until you reach the slope again. You don't look back. You don't need to. That image is carved into you now. You descend into a gully lined with ferns that have turned pale and sickly. They hang limp, uncurled. The earth beneath them feels hollow. You hear distant thunder. You know it's not thunder. You climb a small hill for a better view, and in the far distance, just beyond the haze, a wall of ash is rolling forward, slow, steady. Not a storm, a signal. You lie flat on the hilltop and watch it come, because what else can you do? You think of the Gorgonops lying beneath that broken tree, breathing, waiting. And something about that image brings you peace. Not because it's safe, but because it's honest. No pretense, no false hope, just breath. And then, silence. It's night again, but not the kind of night that comforts. This one feels hollow. Not quiet, but emptied. You sit beneath a rock overhang, wrapped in whatever scraps of warmth you can find, watching embers from your fire fade into the darkness. Nothing moves, not even the wind. Even the insects have stopped buzzing. You wonder if this is what the last Gorgonops hears too. Not death, but the absence of everything else. You stare into the dark and try to sleep. You don't. Your mind is too loud, too full of images you didn't ask to keep. Teeth in moonlight, a jaw held still by exhaustion, breathing slowed, eyes glazed but still open. You don't dream. You remember. Morning crawls over the horizon like a wounded animal. The sky is pale, like someone tried to bleach it clean. You rise slowly and stretch muscles that feel more like rope than flesh. Then you start walking again. The next valley is different. You notice it right away. The ash is thinner here. The trees, though dead, still stand. There are tracks. Not Gorgonops. Smaller, more chaotic. You crouch beside them and squint. Scavengers. Maybe therocephalians. Maybe something newer. The prints are fresher than anything you've seen in days. Not straight lines, just desperate zigzags, searching, fleeing. The food chain has no structure anymore. You walk further and find a kill site. But this one's wrong. There's no elegance, no control. The body, another Dicynodont, is shredded, pulled apart messily, ribs broken, viscera scattered. This isn't hunting. It's panic. You crouch over the body, heart sinking. These aren't Gorgonops marks. These are teeth too small, too jagged, claw swipes like desperation. Several different bite radii, all overlapping. You were afraid of extinction, but now you understand something worse. What comes after? The world isn't just losing its top predator, it's losing its order. Without Gorgonops, there's no gravity, no North Star. Everything else spins out, teeth bared, trying to fill a throne that no longer exists, and none of them are fit for it. You press on. You don't know what you're looking for. Maybe another footprint, maybe another den, maybe just proof that something still remembers how to survive with dignity. By midday, you find a canyon narrow enough to slip through sideways. You pause at its entrance, heart thudding, and step inside. The walls are streaked with black soot, but cool, quiet. It's dark in here, and for a moment, you forget about the sky, the ash, the smell. You just listen. And in that darkness, you hear it. Breathing. Soft. Shallow. You step forward. And there it is. Curled beneath a ledge, smaller than the others, lean, still young. A juvenile Gorgonops, still alive. Barely. Its eyes flick open as you approach. Not surprised, not afraid, just aware. It doesn't growl. It doesn't move. It just watches you. You sit down slowly across from it, knees cracking. The silence stretches. You don't speak. It wouldn't matter if you did. But you stay. Because someone should. Here's a mainstream paleontological fact. We've never found direct fossil evidence of Gorgonops cups. No nests, no juveniles clearly linked to a parental specimen. But based on growth rings and bones, we know they did exist. And some might have lived long enough to become something else entirely, if only the world had allowed it. This one won't. Its sides move shallowly. There's a gash on one leg, not fresh, infected. You can smell it. You offer it water. It doesn't drink, but it doesn't run either. It accepts your presence the way the land accepts ash, passively, without resistance, without gratitude. You stay until sunset. When you rise, it watches you, then closes its eyes again. That's the last you'll see of it. And maybe that's the point. You climb out of the canyon and look back only once. It's still there, still breathing, still trying. And that's more than you expected. You travel until darkness swallows everything again. The fire you built tonight is small, cautious. There's movement in the shadows, scavengers again. You don't fear them, not anymore. They don't hunt, they hover, waiting for the world to stop twitching. You think of that juvenile, curled up and quiet, of the adult you saw collapse beneath a tree, of the first one, the one that chose not to eat you. And you realize something. Gorgonops didn't disappear. It diminished, gradually, elegantly, a slow withdrawal from a world no longer suited to its precision. Because when the air turns sour, and the ground burns, and the food runs, saber-teeth aren't enough. The night deepens. You fall asleep beside your fire, fingers curled around the rock that you pretend is a weapon. You don't need it, but it helps. And somewhere behind your eyes, something breathes. Still.
The wind returns before dawn. It moves softly through the trees, or what's left of them, stirring ash into little spirals that dance along the ground. You sit up, brush dust from your face, and listen. For a second, you imagine hearing footsteps, heavy, measured. But it's just the wind. Still, you get up and move. Some part of you can't sit still anymore. Not after the canyon, not after that breath. You walk through low ferns, past rocks still hot from whatever sleeps beneath the crust, and keep your eyes low. The ground tells better stories than the sky. And today, the stories shift. There are tracks again. Not Gorgonops, too small, but fresh, scattered, many. They weave in and out of the mud, overlap, scatter, return. You kneel beside one, 3 toes, sharp claws. Not wide enough for a predator, but fast. You scan the brush and see them, shapes, 4 of them, maybe 5. Not quite reptiles, not quite mammals. Long snouts, hunched backs, narrow limbs. The next thing, you stay low, watch. They sniff, dig. One catches a small lizard, snaps it in half, chews without chewing. They don't waste time. They don't roar. They get things done. And that, suddenly, is what evolution looks like. It doesn't roar. It whispers. Here's a mainstream fact. After the Permian extinction, species like Lystroceros became unexpectedly dominant. They weren't flashy, they weren't fast, but they burrowed, scavenged, bred rapidly. They adapted. And in a broken world, adaptation beats excellence every time. You rise and move parallel to the creatures. They don't notice, or if they do, they don't care. That's fine. You're not here to be seen anymore. You're here to witness the shift. Further up the ridge, you find another kill. This one older, bones scattered but not cleaned. And there, near the spine, the marks return. Sabers. Clean. Deep. This wasn't a panic kill. It was a decision. You trace the line of the bite, your fingers fitting into the groove like keys in a lock. It's recent. You stand, heart beating harder than it should. One still out there. At least, it was. You follow the drag marks, wide, shallow, and soon they vanish into brush. You lose the trail, but it doesn't matter. You sit in the dirt and just smile. Because the idea of one more, it's enough. Historians still debate whether Gorgonops went extinct suddenly or declined over generations. Some claim it died in a single ecological collapse. Others believe small, isolated populations held on, ghosts in the corners of a dying world. You like the second version better. It's less tidy. You climb another ridge and look out over the valley. More shapes, more movement. Not herds, not dominance, just life. Weird, malleable, persistent. They crawl, they chirp, one barks, another slips into a burrow.
You watch it vanish and imagine the roots of that tunnel stretching down like veins. The old world lived on the surface. The new one? It hides. Here's a quirky tidbit. Gorgonops had no diaphragm. Breathing was controlled entirely by rib expansion and compression. Effective, but energy intensive. The kind of system that only works if the air is clean and the temperature's manageable. But the Permian isn't offering that anymore. And somewhere, not far from this ridge, something with smaller lungs and sharper timing is waiting to take over. You spend that afternoon in silence. No narration, no facts, just breath. Yours, the wind's. The occasional scream of something far away, but not close enough to matter. You build a small fire again, just a glow, enough to feel human. And that night, you dream. You're in the ferns again, kneeling, watching, and Gorgonops walks past. Not slow, not limping, just present. It doesn't see you, it doesn't have to. It knows you're there, and it keeps walking. Because the dream isn't about you, it's about letting go. You wake with tears dried on your cheeks. You don't remember crying. You step out of camp. The morning is cold. A mist hangs over the valley. You stare down into it and realize something huge. There's no apex anymore. There are no more rulers, only survivors. You thought Gorgonops was terrifying because of what it did, but that was never it. It was terrifying because of what it represented. An age where killing perfectly was enough. An age where evolution favored the blade. But now, the blade has dulled, and the shadows grow teeth. You take one last look into the fog and begin walking down toward what comes next. Not as a predator, not as prey, but as a witness.
By now, the days have begun to blend. Each morning is gray. Each evening is quieter than the one before. You walk because there's nothing else to do, and because stopping feels like admitting that the story is already over. But something in you still hopes for a final page. You descend into a shallow basin just after dawn. Mist curls low across the ground, and for a moment it almost looks like the world is breathing. You close your eyes and pretend it is. Then you open them again, because hope doesn't change what's coming. The mist parts as you walk, revealing a scattering of bones. Dozens of them, some fresh, some old, all gnawed, all broken, but none of them clean. You crouch. No saber slashes here, no twin punchers, just fractures, shatter marks. You run your hand over a snapped femur and feel the ragged edge. The new world eats differently. Gorgonops was precise. These things, whatever they are, aren't. They rip, they tear, they consume. Not for dominance, just to stay alive. That's the difference. The king is gone. The scavengers are rising. Here's a mainstream fact. After the Permian extinction, biodiversity collapsed. Up to 90% of species disappeared. But what survived wasn't the strongest. It was the most adaptable. Burrowers, insectivores, generalists. Things that didn't care what they ate so long as they ate. You pass through a grove of dead ferns, not burned, just faded, like they gave up trying. A few wither as you brush past them, their spores drifting like fog. You cough. The air is thicker again, and in the distance, another sound. Water. You follow it eagerly, boots crunching soft ash. The terrain slopes downward, and soon you reach a pool. A wide one, stagnant, brown, edged with mud and buzzing flies. But it's water. You drop to your knees and sniff it. Barely drinkable. But that's enough. You fill a canteen, wash your face, and when you look up, you see tracks. fresh ones, three-toed, wide-spaced, deep. And right beside them, four-pawed with that unmistakable dragline between. Gorgonops, still here, or here recently. Your heart kicks. You follow the prints, each one more precious than the last. They lead away from the pool through a narrow corridor between stone walls, then down into a shaded hollow. You slow your pace. And there, tucked beneath a fallen tree, bones. But not dead, just left behind. Old prey, ribs still streaked red, bite marks, clean ones. It was here, and it fed. That changes everything. Because if Gorgonops is still feeding, then it's still fighting. You crouch beside the bones and let out a long breath. For a moment, the ash doesn't feel so heavy. The silence not so cruel. You look around, scanning for movement, and think about what it means to live like that, on the fringe, in a world that no longer makes room for you. You remember something you read once, an old fringe theory, that extinction isn't death, it's irrelevance. It's when the system forgets how to support you, when the things you depend on stop showing up, when the rules change and you don't. Gorgonops didn't die. It was outvoted. You move further into the hollow and find something else. Not tracks. A den. Small, shallow, just beneath a rock ledge. And in it, fur. Scraps of it clinging to dried leaves. Mottled, bristled, gray-brown. The kind of coat that hides you in both light and shadow. You touch it. Still soft. Still warm? You freeze. Listen. No sound. No breath. But something in the earth feels alert. You step back and wait. Nothing stirs. Eventually, you sit. Because you want to be here when it returns. Hours pass. The light changes. But nothing comes. You lie down near the den and close your eyes. You dream again. Not of the past, but of the after. The ground overgrown with moss. New creatures prowling in the dark. Teeth, still, but different shapes. Jaws without sabers. Limbs that reach, not strike. You see it all, clearly, impossibly. And when you wake, the sun is gone. The den is still empty. But you don't feel disappointed. Because even an empty den means resistance. You stand, knees stiff, and walk back toward the ridge. At the top, you look out. Fires burn far to the east, slow-moving blazes licking dry forests into black bone. And beyond them, movement. But not predators, just survivors. Scattered, small, shadows of shadows. You whisper the name again, Gorgonops. And something inside you answers. Not a roar, not a growl, just stillness. Because some kings die on their thrones, and some step down. You watch the last light fade, then turn back toward your path, and keep walking.
The next morning begins with heat. No sun, just heat, radiating from the ground like the world has a fever. You squint up at the sky. It's colorless now. Not gray, not blue, just empty. You take a deep breath and regret it. The air tastes metallic, as if you've licked the inside of a rusted pipe. Your lungs tighten. You tie a cloth over your face and keep going. There's no more trail, just instinct. You pass through another grove of stunted trees. The branches twist in spirals, their leaves spotted and thin. A few still buzz with insects, but even those seem confused, zigzagging without rhythm, like they've forgotten how flight works. Everything feels uncoordinated, like the planet is improvising now. You crest a ridge and stop suddenly.
Because down below, in the valley, something moves. Big. Too big for a scavenger. You drop low, crawl to the edge, and look. There, moving slowly across a field of half-dead brush, is a Gorgonops. Not a ghost, not a dream. Real. Still walking. Still hunting. Still here. You blink, almost not believing it. Its gait is slower than you remember, deliberate, but there's no limp. Its head is up, shoulders squared. Its fur, or what's left of it, bristles with ash. It sniffs the air, and then it stops, eyes locking forward. You scan the valley. There, a lone Dicynodont, young, nervous, grazing. A mistake. You can feel the moment before it happens, when the Gorgonops shifts its weight. Then it explodes into motion. You see the muscles fire, the paws hit the ground like drum beats. The predator closes the distance in seconds. The Dicynodont bolts, but too late. Impact. The collision throws both into a swirl of dust. You can't see details. You hear a squeal, then silence. When it clears, the Gorgonops is standing over the body, breathing hard, victorious. You want to cheer. You don't. You just watch. Because this is no longer just a hunt. It's a statement. Gorgonops is still king, even in the ruins. It feeds slowly, not ravenously, methodically, like it knows what to take, like it knows this meal has to last. You crouch for a long time, barely moving. And for once, you don't think about following it. You don't want to know where it sleeps. You want it to stay mysterious. Here's a mainstream fact. Some paleontologists estimate Gorgonops may have needed to eat every few days to sustain its energy. But as prey vanished, even apex predators had to adapt, fasting longer, moving farther. What you just saw might have been its first meal in weeks. You retreat from the ridge and move west. The landscape tilts towards broken stone. Small fissures lace the ground. You step carefully. The heat here is worse. Steam hisses from the cracks. You pause near a crevice and peer inside. Red glow. Lava, close to the surface. You back away, heart pounding. The earth isn't angry anymore. It's bleeding. You walk on and find a shallow cave in the early afternoon. Small, cool. You crawl inside to escape the heat, pressing your back against stone. It smells of mineral and moss, not fresh, not dead. You close your eyes and remember the look on Gorgonops' face as it fed. Calm, like it wasn't afraid of the end, like it knew and accepted it. You don't sleep, you rest, and that's enough. By dusk, the air has shifted. A breeze, sharp and sudden. Ash swirls again. You step outside, expecting fire. But it's not fire. It's rain. Cool this time, not sulfurous. You tilt your face up, let it fall. You almost laugh, because it feels like the world, just for a moment, wants to say sorry. You walk in it for hours, soaked, lighter. Still no stars, still no moon. Just the hush of raindrops over dust. And then, tracks. Not Gorgonops, something else. Reptilian, three-toed, long stride, new. You kneel beside them. They're fresh, still filling with water. And you realize, the world isn't waiting for Gorgonops anymore. It's moving on. You stare at the prints for a while, trying to feel something. But all you feel is balance. The predator is still out there, for now. But its shadow is thinning. Its myth already fading. You whisper its name one more time.
Not as a call, not as a prayer, as a thank you. And the rain answers with silence. You keep walking, not towards something, not away, just forward, like Gorgonops did. Because when the world ends and begins again, it's the ones who move anyway that leave the deepest footprints.
You don't sleep that night. Not because you're afraid, because you're aware. The air feels different now, like it's rearranging its molecules into something new. You lie awake beneath a crooked canopy of what used to be trees, watching the branches creak above you like old bones. Raindrops patter from leaf to leaf, each one sounding more distant than the last. The world is winding down, and somehow, you're still here. You sit up before dawn, muscles stiff, neck sore. A low mist snakes along the ground, licking your ankles like it's trying to pull you back down. But you keep moving, because you're close to something. You don't know what, but you feel it. The slope ahead is familiar, the curve of it, the pattern of the scattered boulders. And then you see it, the overlook. You've been here before. Days ago, weeks. Time doesn't work the same now. But you remember. The first time you saw the herds. The first time Gorgonops watched with you. You climb to the edge and sit. The view has changed. No herds, no movement. Just a sea of gray-green nothing stretching into haze. Like the land itself is waiting for someone to repaint it. But no one will. You stay there for a long time, listening, thinking. You thought you were chasing a predator, but now you realize you were walking with an ending. You descend slowly into the valley, each step kicking up thin clouds of ash. The ground is soft, too soft. You press your hand into the dirt and it holds the shape for a second too long. Something beneath it is decaying. Not flesh, not plants. Time. You pause at the edge of a dry stream bed and spot something strange. Curved stone shapes, just barely visible beneath the surface. You brush one clean. It's not stone. It's a skull. Gorgonops. Perfectly preserved. Mouth slightly open, as if it died mid-sentence. You run your fingers over the teeth, those sabers still sharp. Even in death, it holds authority. But this one didn't die from violence. No breaks, no trauma. It lay down and stopped. Here's a mainstream fact. Some Gorgonops fossils have been found curled in resting positions. No signs of struggle, no sign of burial, just stillness. As if, one day, the body said, enough. And that was it. You sit beside the skull for a while, not to study it, just to be with it. After a time, you find other bones, ribs, a forelimb, a crushed pelvis, scattered, not by teeth, but by time. You wonder if this was the last one, or just the last you'll see. You keep walking. The path narrows into a corridor of stone. The walls rise on either side, tall and jagged. Something about them feels ceremonial, like walking through a hallway toward a final moment. And at the end of it, a den. Not large, just the hollow beneath a fallen log. You freeze, because it smells like Gorgonops. Old fur, damp earth, blood, faint but distinct. You kneel, peering inside. Empty, but not untouched. Leaves are matted, bones lined against the back wall. A skull, small, rodent-like, placed near the entrance. It's not a kill site. It's a home. Or was. You sit back and let the truth settle. Someone tried to live, to nest, to stay. You press your palm to the ground just outside the den and close your eyes. It's still warm. Not geothermal. Just memory. Here's a fringe theory, unproven, poetic, that some Gorgonops individuals may have shown early signs of parental care. Not mammals yet, but almost. Maybe not hugs and lullabies, but shelter, guarding, teaching. You imagine it now, an adult dragging prey to a pup, standing watch, letting the world crumble outside, but holding this one patch of earth steady. It's not science, but it feels true. You rise and walk again. The sun tries to break through the haze, fails, and gives up. You climb another ridge, look back at the valley one last time, and then forward. Ahead, something new glints in the distance, light on scales. You pause. It's not Gorgonops. You know that instantly. The shape is wrong, the posture upright. It moves quickly, with intent. A successor, and not a kind one. Historians still argue whether the creatures that came after were smarter, more adaptable, but not more noble. Because evolution doesn't care about nobility. It cares about timing. You take a breath and step forward, not to catch it, not to chase it, just to say, I saw the ones who came before, and I remembered, even when the sky forgot their names.
You stay at the overlook for what feels like forever. Down below, the world is resetting itself, just not in a way that makes sense to you yet. Not in the way you were hoping for. You were chasing monsters, remember? You wanted teeth and blood and roars in the night. But now, the horror has changed shape. It's quiet, slow, bureaucratic. A mass extinction isn't cinematic, it's procedural. Each morning, fewer calls. Each night, fewer shadows moving in the dark. The things that remain aren't triumphing, they're enduring. The ones who thrive in simplicity, the burrowers, the generalists, the scavengers, they're the ones who will write the next chapter. And Gorgonops? It's stuck in the one that's ending. You leave the overlook and move downhill, deeper into a region that still looks a little green. Not because it's thriving, just because the ash hasn't gotten there yet. You find the creek again, or what used to be a creek. Now it's more of a ribbon of mud, occasionally reflecting a sky that can't decide if it's cloudy or on fire. You walk beside it, wondering if Gorgonops once drank from this same stream. And then you find it. Not the predator, but the imprint. A fossil, half exposed in the silt. A forepaw, perfectly preserved. The claw curves sharp and elegant, caught in mid-stride, as if the creature had pressed pause just before vanishing. You kneel beside it, brush away the dirt, and see the pads of the foot. Even the texture of the skin. It looks recent, but it isn't. It's the past pretending to still exist. And for a moment, you feel like a ghost. Not in a spooky way, in a historical way. Like you are the anachronism now, wandering a world you were never meant to see. Here's a mainstream fact. Fossilization is rare. For every Gorgonops that lived, thousands vanished without leaving a trace. What we know comes from accidents of preservation. The ones buried just right, in just the right mud, under just the right pressure. The rest? Gone. We don't remember them because we can't. And that, maybe, is the real extinction. Not the dying, the forgetting. You camp near the fossil that night. Not because it's safe, nothing really is anymore, but because it feels right. A kind of vigil. The stars try to shine through the haze, but fail. You imagine Gorgonops curled up somewhere nearby. Not hunting, not fighting, just breathing, just existing. And maybe that's enough. You wake to a different sound. Rain. Real,
actual rain. You lift your face to it and laugh, dry, cracked, a little feral. It's not enough to fix anything, but it feels like hope, or at least like the earth hasn't completely given up. You head east again toward higher land. The ground gets steeper, rockier, more difficult to traverse. You wonder if Gorgonops ever came this way, if it could even handle this terrain. Its body was built for bursts of power, not climbing. But maybe it tried. Maybe desperation taught it new tricks. You pause at a high ridge. Far below, you see movement. Small, fast, numerous. Not Gorgonops. You kneel and squint. They're mammals, or proto-mammals anyway. Rat-like, sharp-toothed, burrowing creatures scuttling through the underbrush in search of whatever this new world has to offer. They look ridiculous, soft, fragile, but they'll win. Not because they're stronger, because they're flexible. Because they hide when Gorgonops would roar. Because they sleep through the famine when Gorgonops would pace itself to death. Because they need less. Fringe theory time. Some paleontologists believe that many early mammals thrived not just by burrowing, but by slowing their metabolism, essentially hibernating through parts of the disaster. While apex predators with high energy needs starved, the scrappy insect eaters just curled up and waited. It wasn't glory, but it worked. You think of Gorgonops now, not as a failure, but as a symbol, a relic of a world that believed in power. Big teeth, big bodies, big dominance. But power didn't save it. The system changed, and it didn't. You keep climbing, one foot in front of the other. The air is thin now, cold, but cleaner. The ash clouds are thinner up here. The horizon stretches farther. You spot other creatures, mostly small, mostly new, nothing familiar. No more Gorgonops. And maybe that's how it ends. Not with a skeleton, not with a scream, just with the realization that you haven't seen one in a while, that no more bones show up in the layers, that even the rocks forget.
You sit on the highest ridge you've reached yet, boots dusted in gray silt, hair tangled with ash and wind. The land below stretches wide and wrinkled, cracked like the skin of something old and unwell. You look across what used to be lush fern forest and swampland, now reduced to a mosaic of skeletal trees and sterile valleys. Nothing moves for miles. You feel like the only thing left with a pulse. And somewhere out there, not so long ago, Gorgonops hunted. You close your eyes, trying to hear it. That low, guttural breath behind the ferns, the deliberate tread of padded feet, the snap of jaws cleaving through bone. But it's not there. Even in your memory, it's starting to fade. Below the ridge, you spot something curious, a line of freshly disturbed earth. Not volcanic, not weather-made, dug. You climb down, cautious, parting brittle shrubs with your hands. And there, near the edge of a dried stream bed, you find the remnants of a shallow tunnel. Too wide for a mole, too straight for a natural crack. A burrow. You step closer and notice something inside. Bones. Small ones. Maybe a juvenile dicynodont. And another set, closer together, curved, with those familiar saber teeth just barely peeking from a long, narrow snout. A Gorgonops skeleton, curled into the shape of a question mark. A nest? Maybe. You kneel, heart thudding. The smaller skeleton is clearly prey, dragged inside, picked clean. But the larger one shows no wounds, no breakage, no signs of a fight. Just stillness. Did it lay down and not get back up? Did it fall asleep? Or did it know, somehow, that there was nowhere else to go? Mainstream paleontologists often note that predator burials are rare. Prey animals tend to die in groups,
mass events, floods, stampedes. But apex predators die alone, scattered, forgotten, which is why finding a near-complete Gorgonops skeleton in a den-like depression would be extraordinary. Here, it's heartbreaking. You sit with it for a while, just you and the ghost, and you realize something. The ground is changing again. Not visibly, but subtly. The air smells cleaner than it did yesterday. A few shoots of green poke out from the ash. Early colonizers, hardy, ugly, determined. Life is creeping back. But it won't be that life. You look at the skull beside you. Those saber teeth gleam like tiny ivory sickles. Beautiful, useless now. You remember a fringe theory, less accepted, more poetic. It suggests that the saber-toothed predators didn't vanish because of extinction, but as a symbol of it. That evolution moved on, no longer needing flair or drama. It wanted efficiency. The age of showboating was over. No more sabers, just teeth. You pull yourself to your feet and walk away from the den, not out of disrespect, but because you know staying won't change anything. History isn't rewritten by witnesses, only remembered. As you climb the next ridge, the land changes again. Not radically, but you notice it now. The slope feels softer. The ground underfoot doesn't crackle as much. You see more shoots, even an insect or two. Whatever's next, it's begun. But you won't see Gorgonops again. That much is clear. Historians still argue whether Gorgonops had the intelligence of a mammal or the instincts of a reptile. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. Smart enough to learn, not smart enough to plan. But it didn't need to plan. Not until the rules changed, until the weather soured and the prey vanished and fire rained from the sky. You wonder if it had more time. Could it have adapted? Could it have pulled off the same trick our ancestors did? Slipping underground, shrinking, biding time? Maybe, but maybe not. You reach the summit of a stony outcrop and look down at a long, winding valley below. A river, actual water, flowing and silver, cuts through it like a scar. Along its banks, herds graze. Not Gorgonops prey, not Dicynodonts. Something else. Stockier, faster. You squint and realize they're reptiles, archosaurs. The future is here. It's just wearing different teeth. You sigh and sit. For a while, you say nothing. And then you whisper, not to the wind, but to the fossil sleeping in the den behind you. You were the sharpest thing that ever lived, but sharp didn't make you safe. You sit until night falls, not because you're lost, but because part of you doesn't want to see what happens next. Because part of you wishes Gorgonops was still out there. A final flicker of fang in a world that decided to move on. Historians still argue whether Gorgonops had the intelligence of a mammal or the instincts of a reptile. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. Smart enough to learn, not smart enough to plan. But it didn't need to plan. Not until the rules changed, until the weather soured and the prey vanished and fire rained from the sky. You wonder if it had more time. Could it have adapted? Could it have pulled off the same trick our ancestors did? Slipping underground, shrinking, biding time? Maybe, but maybe not. You reach the summit of a stony outcrop and look down at a long, winding valley below. A river, actual water, flowing and silver, cuts through it like a scar. Along its banks, herds graze. Not Gorgonops prey, not Dicynodonts. Something else. Stockier, faster. You squint and realize they're reptiles, archosaurs. The future is here. It's just wearing different teeth. You sigh and sit. For a while, you say nothing. And then you whisper, not to the wind,
but to the fossil sleeping in the den behind you. You were the sharpest thing that ever lived, but sharp didn't make you safe. You sit until night falls, not because you're lost, but because part of you doesn't want to see what happens next. Because part of you wishes Gorgonops was still out there. A final flicker of fang in a world that decided to move on.
The wind is quieter now. Not gone, just softened, like the planet itself is trying not to wake anything that managed to survive. You sit beneath a half-dead tree, the bark flaking off like ancient parchment, watching the morning fog stretch itself across the valley floor. It's cold again, but not deadly, just real. You've run out of trails to follow. No more footprints. No more skulls grinning from the underbrush. Just memory. And memory's tricky. You can't hold on to it forever. Even the sharpest tooth dulls in the mind if you don't feed it. You pull a stick from the dirt and start sketching in the ash. A Gorgonops head, snout broad, eyes forward, saber teeth just barely touching the ground. You draw the paws next, big, cat-like, powerful. But halfway through the tail, you stop. Not because you're finished, because it hurts. Because something inside you realizes that the world you've been walking through, following, surviving, witnessing, it's finally slipped out of your reach. Not just in space, in time. It's over. Mainstream science agrees. The end of the Permian wasn't just a biological catastrophe, it was a metaphysical one. Ecosystems didn't just collapse, realities collapsed. The world before the extinction wasn't just different in content, it was different in texture. Thicker air, higher oxygen, stranger sounds. Blood ran hotter, predators were weirder. Every breath was heavier. And then, gone. Replaced. You rise and look around one last time. It feels wrong that nothing marks the end. No plaque, no monument, not even a roar. But that's how extinctions go. When Gorgonops vanished, no one noticed. There were no weeping Dicynodonts, no closing ceremonies, just empty burrows, just silence. And yet, you were here. You walked alongside the most brutal predator you've never heard of. You watched it calculate, hunt, rest, care. You saw it bleed, fight, lose, persist. You were there when it ruled. And you were there when it fell. You take a few steps back and glance at your drawing in the ash. It's already fading. A breeze carries away the line of its jaw. Another gust rubs out the eyes. You try to stop it with your foot, but it doesn't matter. The image was never going to last. And maybe that's okay. Here's a quirky historical footnote. In some indigenous mythologies, creatures from a first world live on not in fossils or bones, but in dreams. They never truly vanish, because memory is a kind of resurrection. To speak their names is to keep them moving, even if only in stories. So maybe Gorgonops isn't gone. Maybe it's just dormant, sleeping inside our fear of the dark, whispering in the rustle of ferns, etched in the shadows of things that still bite, still prowl, still remind us that we were never really in charge. Historians still debate if Gorgonops was mammal enough to be our ancestor, but that question might be wrong. It doesn't matter if we came from it. What matters is what we carry with us from it. And you carry the sound of its breath on your neck, the flash of its eyes in the dusk, the slow, deliberate way it walked into ash without complaint. You carry its presence. And tonight, when you close your eyes and the modern world tries to lull you with hums and screens and electric comfort, maybe you'll remember what it felt like to crouch in the dark, listening for something that used to rule the world. Not because it was loud, but because it understood the silence. So when the wind brushes your window, when your heartbeat quickens without reason, when your dreams take you someplace older, smile. You're not alone. The Gorgon is still with you. Always has been. Always will be. And now, let go. Let the ash settle in your lungs, just a little. Let the earth still itself beneath you. No more predators. No more footprints. No more waiting for the growl in the dark. You've walked through a world that no longer exists, beside a creature too brutal to last and too beautiful to forget. You've seen the Franz wave one last time, watched rivers vanish into dust, felt the weight of a mass extinction, not in charts, but in heartbeats. And yet, here you are, still breathing, still listening. The Gorgonops is gone, but its echo lingers, in the whisper of wind through tall grass, in the steady, cautious step of a night hunter, in the eyes of every animal that calculates instead of panics. You're safe now. The journey's done. The forest is quiet. The fire is out. The bones are at rest. You can close your eyes. Let the shapes behind your eyelids move slowly, like smoke. Let the sounds drift. The crackle of underbrush, the distant huff of breath, the snap of teeth in memory only. Let it all fade. Tonight, you've survived something ancient. And tomorrow? Tomorrow belongs to softer creatures. But tonight still belongs to the Gorgon. Sleep well, dream deeper. And if something growls in your dreams, don't run. It just remembers you. Sweet dreams.